Hello, family. Today we are going to talk about safe behaviors in nonverbal children. This is one of the issues that arises most concern among parents of young children, both inside and outside home, because knowing that our children will be careful and respond to our directions, especially in difficult or unsafe situations, or when they try to learn something, but that learning implies some kind of risk, is one. So when they do this, to be certain that they are going to respond in a certain way, it's really, really important to most of us. So these are skills that actually can be developed. And today we are going to talk about some tips how to access that. You need to keep in mind that all of these activities have to be done numerous times in order for learning to take place, and never forget how well they learn with our method, which is based on repetition. So repetition is very important, and your patience throughout that repetition and your motivation throughout that repetition is very important. But above all, you need to present materials and activities, even if they are verbal or non-verbal, as consistent and as repetitive as possible, as static as possible, especially at first, because for our children to realize that something is the same thing, in order to perceive that repetition and in order to be able to learn it, they need to see sameness, to establish a relationship among things. So that structure is very important in the intervention, to be able to repeat it all over again and to achieve that significant learning that we are after. So here your role, as always, is crucial and determinating. So safety can be divided into different aspects. The first we are going to talk about is safety with objects. There are everyday objects that require intervention, work, education for our children with communication difficulties. For example, the blender, the iron, the hair dryer, the toaster. And we are going to work on this aspect because they are sort of dangerous, and we have them at every home. So we need to intervene. It is recommended to do all things through images and throughout stories. There are children who tolerate better not to personalize the story, but to make them with other characters. We can even take their favorite character and make a story so that they learn throughout that story or throughout a song what they should do to be careful with these dangerous objects. You will see that this is a very important resource for home to introduce any work we do as a first contact. Then the second aspect is road safety. So that in itself has two different aspects. You need to start very, very with very, very small interventions, familiarizing ourselves with the zebra crossing, with the simple fact of looking for that before crossing. And can be made, like, for example, the first story, or some kind of activity you do, because the zebra crossing is around the house, but houses you can invite to take a photo, to always extend the story and continue to work some other issues at home. But that is the first thing, and I have found that it's not something that parents realize they need to do. You also can propose making a model in which you have a clear idea of our environment. And you also place all these elements that begin to integrate with these specific activities, like the traffic lights or the sounds, where they come, how do we know where the cars come from, where to look. In this way, in a visual way, like you have an activity at home where you can generalize the learning throughout movement of cars around the model. You can take dolls that go walking through the zebra, or you can expand this activity with some most important places or elements you need to work on according to your own environment. Then you have private space security. There are spaces, I'm calling this way, the spaces that require different behaviors that are functional for the family. And it is very important that you use these interventions for spaces that are very relevant for you, like, for example, the supermarket, the hairdresser, the church, the park. You start working within those areas and spaces. What are the appropriate behaviors and that serve as a model for our children? Then you can use games for practice at home. You can establish a first contact so that you recognize the place and start little by little making approximations so that you integrate different aspects of the experience and into, like, creating a mental or a visual map that where they are able to integrate all the security learning that they are making. Then we have the social security, and this is a very important aspect, as we know, because working on social protocols, distance, respect within the different spaces, it is a crucial area for our little ones, especially paying attention the difficulties that our children present in this area and how we introduce this for them to feel safe in a family gathering, at the park, and other social areas, and the way they need to behave. And finally, we have the sensory safety, because it is closely related to other areas, actually, that I wanted to highlight this, because sometimes in a place the level of noise or the lighting into a space requires a containment and self-control from our children. And you can, for example, go to visit a church and you have to internalize that we have to use a lower voice. So we need to propose an activity where inside the house or inside these places you dramatize the fact that, for example, mommy is asleep in the sofa, so that if we enter with a natural voice and we go through the living room, and you are aware of mama's sleeping, you need to reduce that voice dramatically so that you can get into the playroom without waking up mommy. And then you can practice some things they need to take into account to make generalizations of, or getting to know what are the indications they need to follow in order to generalize those learnings and to apply them without some specific learning. Following instructions is very important on the safety behaviors of our children. When here at the VICON method, we work a lot on verbal instructions. So, and you have a very good example of how to do it all throughout the method. So I'm not going to expand a lot about it. I am just going to, say that these instructions, the verbal instructions, are very important, that are not just restricted to the early development or to very simple instructions, but we need to take them along to very complex or more developmentally complex instructions, so that we continue to accompany our child into a higher level of development throughout these verbal instructions, even though it is more or less in the same structure and repetitive way. But I think that it is more relevant at this point that we talk about nonverbal instructions, because this is a very useful type of instructions and very necessary for our children with communicational problems. And we are going to propose a very important game where you are going to leave language aside, which we know that for adults can be quite challenging to be able to develop a nonverbal ability. But it is very necessary for following general instructions, even when they are verbal. Let me explain. It is very important that that your child follows, for example, verbal instructions, but it is more important that he is present or attentive to ourselves or to the adult of reference in that moment, and to open that awareness in our children. You need to work on the nonverbal instructions. So the game is the following. First, you need to make your child follow yourself around into the space, attentive to us at all times, and then you start generalizing it into an outside space, in the park, in the supermarket, at work, or at walks, or in the park. In this moment, you leave words aside and you start playing with your body, with contact, working with a lot of transitions between spaces, and encouraging the bond and the connection that you have with your little one. It is an aspect that we often don't work on and it can change a lot our relationship as well throughout the day. So when he's following you, the important thing is that you, for example, challenge his awareness or his attention to you, changing speed, changing behavior, changing the volume of what you're doing, so that you can see if he's attentive, and you can laugh about all the mistakes you make along that learning, encouraging also like enjoyment and fun among you, and also that specific attention to the adult as a reference, which is very, very important for nonverbal instructions. Initiative and spontaneity are part of our children's safety, because it has to do with looking, body position, where sounds come from. So it's not something that is directly linked to safety, but it is sort of a foundation for it. It's a requirement. So I am going to talk about it now, because it is very important that we are aware of how our children perceive themselves, their body, their surrounding, to be able to construct a safety behavior. When participating in any situation, in any game, or in any interaction, it is essential to let our children do so. So we can suggest simple activities in everyday life that have to do with, for example, choice. Our children may not be able to answer open questions, like, for example, what do you want? Or what do you want to have for breakfast? What do you want to eat? Do you want to go this way? Do you want to do this? Instead, I think it's better to offer alternatives. Start with two so that we invite them to participate in the interaction, but we limit their the way they participate. So we can let them know that they can choose what t-shirt to wear, what dessert to eat, what to buy in the supermarket, and encourage them to have an active participation in the decision making, because being active also has to do with safety. It's not us that protect them. They start looking at the surrounding and understanding how they should change their behavior accordingly. For example, we can also include in this the latency response. As parents or caregivers, sometimes we have some anxiety in the speed our children respond to us or do some tasks that we ask for them. And this anxiety in us cause them to have fewer opportunities to participate or express their intention. So it is very important that we delay and we give them time to respond, to participate, so that they can train themselves in reducing that latency. Obviously, because they are used to responding and participating with the amount of ability they have, right? So it is very important that we do that exercise of retention of the thoughts or willingness to get an answer from them in order for them to achieve this very important thing. In that sense, spontaneity spontaneity, we all have some, but most of our children tend to repeat what they do or what they want. So they need to learn to be more flexible in that, bring in some new stuff that has to do with what they want related to the environment. So that can also be worked on as an ability, enhancing or working on our reinforcement or reward on each time that they do something spontaneous but related to what happens in the environment and in the surrounding, because that shows that they are attentive to that and they are able to adjust to what the environment asks of them, and they do that spontaneously. So a first thing that we can do about it is to exercise the observation and the communication about the aspects observed, so that there is like a common agreement among adults and the child to the aspect they are looking at and how to adjust to that. It was a practice on safety behavior. I'm going to leave very grounding exercises, because I don't think that I think that it is better to start by very basic things that might look distant from actual safety behavior, but that establish the basis for that. So the first activity, I'm going to call it degree of change, and in this activity it is designed for toddlers who already attend our communication calls. So they might be verbal, or if not, they are open to us, they are already learners. So we can move on to teach them how to maintain that coordination with us, right? Or with any communicational partners. Here, we are going to try to emphasize physical action, because it is through physical action that we learn such coordination. Language here is used to teach action, to communicate the need to regulate action. For example, say slow or down, to signal that joint effort. For example, say we did it, and to communicate encouragement to the partner, like phenomenal, you did it great. Language also begins to be used for regulatory and repair purposes, like checking out if our partner is ready, like saying now, expressing confusion or repairing when our action has interrupted the flow of interaction, like saying I'm sorry. For this, you will need a styrofoam, those that you use on the pool, that are long and thin, and different objects that you are going to place at different levels, like into a stairs, but for example, you can put one on a chair, the other one on a shelf, the other one on a higher shelf. So you both grab an end of that styrofoam end from the pool, and you have an end, and your child has another end, and each of you facing each other, put the object at the lower level of the object at the lower level. So then you look at each other and you say up, and so you take the styrofoam up to the second object. And you repeat this procedure through each level of objects until you get to the highest level. There you say up, suggesting that it must be not possible. You can help, for example, climbing or, I don't know, lifting or tiptoeing. And when it's no longer possible to go higher, you can celebrate it and say, we did it. Now we have, and then you start going down. Okay? You have to make sure that at each time your child does not control the activity, and always remember that it's all about them listening to your changing nonverbal and verbal cues to match their behavior to yours. Right? So this is the first path to safety, that they are adjusting their behavior to ours. The second one, it's called My Words Matter, and it's an activity that is designed for children who need to create sufficient motivation to orient themselves towards us. So they are not learners yet. Of course, like with the other, you will need to emphasize the role of fun or joy, so that curiosity and desire to joint enjoyment replaces the attention-provoking cues. In this case, this activity, we are going to propose that it's used in every interaction. Instead of saying, look at me, you need to reinforce the invitation or that they do this voluntarily. It has 3 areas, and the first one is conscious speech. You speak at a slow pace so that with deliberate pauses, increase the value of each word, making it easier for your little one to process that information. You need to pay attention to the feedback your child gives about the words you say. The second one is balance, because you need to involve 2 aspects. In this case, you do not use more words or elements that your child uses. If it is nonverbal, you should use 1 or just gestures. And the other aspect is, in every interaction, you do not add information or words until your child has provided some meaningful feedback, some kind of a response. We especially recommend that you do not repeat yourself continuously or add more information. Here, more is less. And then the third aspect is highlight. With this, you use your tone, your speed, your volume of your voice to highlight indirectly the words or parts of the communication that carries the most significant information. Experiment with which mode has greater impact on your child attention and motivation. I hope that this will bring significant changes into your interactions and into your child's safety. Thank you.